in the first meeting that they came to, and it was a meeting with all their directs, and they placed a hat in the center of the room on the table, and they said, if anybody at any point in this meeting feels that they are not being heard, please take the hat. And all of us will give our attention to you and listen to what you have to say. Because we don't want any voices, any opinions, any thoughts, ideas to be lost. And this is such a beautiful example of when somebody can embody a culture of openness. And so similarly, there are other people who would put a pink elephant right in the middle to signify elephant in the room, discussions that nobody is having. And when you have that kind of a thing, please take it on. Another very practical thing that people can do, executives especially, is in a meeting, be the last one to speak.
Your business's success depends on relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Shruti Rustagi. Shruti has 2 decades of global experience in Fortune 100 companies, most recently as a strategy leader at Amazon. Outside of Amazon, she's a certified leadership coach and an EQ speaker, helping people maximizing their life with mindset shifts. She is also an upcoming author of the book, Fearless Productivity, Mindset Pivots to Maximize Life. Congrats on your new book and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much, Carl. Excited to be here. And yeah, I'm no longer upcoming. The book is here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see the book when it launches in a couple of days from the date of recording. So by the time this comes out, it'll have been out for a while. But I'm also really excited to have you on the show to talk about how executives can use EQ for more fearless leadership, because I think there's a very much a lack of EQ in the C-suite these days. And also a lot of uncertainty and fear in leadership roles because of how crazy the world is. So how do you see EQ as being the solution for these challenges?
That's a great question, Carl. And it's a question I'm going to answer from, like, I would say almost 3 dimensions, let's call it. Right? So when we think about fearless leadership, we're talking about 1, them being able to lead their people well. 2, them being able to grow or make their company objectives, come to fruition, whether it's growth, it's profitability, whatever the company has set out to do. And 3, grow themselves as human beings as well, and as leaders as well, right? So those are kind of the 3 objectives when we think about leadership. On each of these objectives, let me share with you, in a simplistic way, how EQ is so pivotal. So when we think about people leadership, which is the first pillar, people leadership, exactly like you said right in the intro, it is human to human. It is always about human connection. And the interesting part is that people always, like our teams, the peers who we work with, our stakeholders, they always do things out of primal emotions. This has been now researched and told by, and there's enough science behind it, that everything that we do is always not rational. We behave based on our biases, our judgments, what's top of mind, our emotions. And so that's where regulating emotions, not just of ourselves, but also being able to understand and read the room, to be able to understand what's going on with our partners, with our teams, becomes so critical. Somebody had once made this really amazing statement that your team is always performing for you. And so usually the leader is the last one to get to know what's happening in my team. And that's where EQ becomes super important, because you got to be the first one to know. You should have that open policy. You should have that connection. You should have that team environment such that your team can become high performing, right? And that all comes from EQ. It comes from empathy. It comes from fearlessness, and it comes from psychological safety that you're able to drive with the basics of EQ. And high performing team almost brings us to the second pillar, which is high performance. And, again, like you said, in this day and age, high performance is really about how do you adapt the change. The technology is rapidly changing, the landscape is rapidly changing. So it's not like a cement business we used to be in. Oh, yeah, I'll keep producing and the tonnage will keep increasing, and that's it. And I can sit and relax and my business will take care of itself. It's no longer that. And so, for people to adapt, they need to be able to feel comfortable testing things out, piloting, experimenting. And again, how do you create that environment? By having psychological safety such that people can openly speak up. So that's another place how EQ comes up. And the last one, for us to grow, here is what I would like to say there. For us to grow, we have to think about truly what is our North Star? What's our success compass, right? And it's easy, and that's what I talk about even in my book. It's very easy to really think about how the world perceives success and defining our success based on how the world perceives it, and then taking that path. But guess what? That is not what is going to make you happy. That's not what will make you grow. And so, as a leader, I need to really know about, am I doing it out of fear that I will not be respected and accepted in the world? Or am I doing it because that's truly what I love to do? And that is what my path is. And that's again where we need to take care of our emotions. I'll stop there.
No, that was all really good, and I think it's the all those are those three pillars you mentioned are all things that I've noticed are lacking in most of the executives, and they're not really covered in like the MBA programs or all the focus of what people are considered to be the skills an executive needs to be successful for the past 20 years or so. Those aren't really what has been emphasized or focused on. And now that they are absolutely essential, it is very evident how ill-equipped so many of the people in the C-suite are for what their companies need them to do. And we're seeing it now with the state of businesses and employee engagement and lack of trust and all these other reports and studies that have shown how dysfunctional the relationships between the people are and the companies they're working for or the companies they're buying from. And it really comes down to that lack of EQ and that lack of connection at the core. And so when you're working with people on their EQ, especially people in the executive roles, what is the way you get them started? Because there's that mindset shift that needs to happen, because often one of the biggest hurdles to actually get the momentum going is helping people realize they need the help. So what are some of the ways you help people make that mindset shift in the first place to get moving in the right direction?
Another very good question, Carl. And so before we jump into the mindset shift, let's think about what are some of the things that these executives need to worry about, right? And when I say what are some of the things they need to worry about, I'm going to talk first from just the first pillar, the people pillar, right? Let's think about that for a minute. So the first thing they need to worry about is their team really able to perform well? Is their team open to and sharing with them? Do they have enough innovation and psychological safety in the team? Simply put, that's pretty much the first thing that they need to worry about. And that there are elements of trust in there, there are elements of empathy in there. There's a lot which I'll unpack with you. Right. The second piece to it is, are they able to see into the future enough? Because they need to be able to also help their team grow and move forward and achieve their objectives if they are going to be a good leader. And the last one is, are they able to take everybody together and move forward? So it's not just my team, but my other stakeholders. And these are C-suite and executives, right? So these are the people who are fundamentally tasked with taking everybody together and moving the company forward both at the same time. Right. So now we think of these are the areas that they need to work on. Let's start with each of these. Now, the first one, creating psychological safety. I can give an example of something that was done by one of the leaders. So they joined a company and they joined at a C level, and they knew already as they were joining in that people are not very vocal about their suggestions. So what they did was they placed a hat in the first meeting that they came to, and it was a meeting with all their directs. And they placed a hat in the center of the room on the table, and they said, if anybody at any point in this meeting feels that they are not being heard, please take the hat. And all of us will give our attention to you and listen to what you have to say. Because we don't want any voices, any opinions, any thoughts, ideas to be lost. And this is such a beautiful example of when somebody can embody a culture of openness. And so, similarly, there are other people who would put a pink elephant right in the middle to signify elephant in the room, discussions that nobody is having. And when you have that kind of a thing, please take it on. Another very practical thing that people can do, executives especially, is in a meeting, be the last one to speak. And this is something that was initially that was given by John F. Kennedy, actually, when he found out that once he gave an opinion, nobody would counter it, because everybody was performing for their leader, so to speak. And so one of the best ways to counter that is you actually become the last one to speak. So you want to hear everybody's opinion. That also gives a message to your team that what they say matters, is important. You take that into consideration. That automatically opens up the doors. The last one that I will say is listen well. Now, listening, of course, is not just about, okay, you say something, I listen to it, and I move on with my way. Also, it's not to listen to reply, but it's really read between the lines, read the body language, understand where they're coming from. What's the underlying fear that they are not sharing with you? What's the underlying anxiety? What's the underlying ambition? And then probe it. Go on these, informal coffee chats, lunches, bowling, anything. Open up, be human, and listen to them as other humans. And so I personally really love the name of your podcast, Carl, because it is truly that human connection, right? So I would say that's the very first set of things that a leader can do, especially to establish a space where people are able to open up and be themselves.
Yeah, I love so many things you said there, and so many great practical tips that can make the start moving the needle, even if as in the right direction, without having to kind of short circuit or kind of get around a lot of the fears that other people might have. Like that whole "be the last one to speak" thing, I think is a brilliant tool suggestion, because so often people feel like even if you say I'm open to what you're having to say, they still don't like believe you, and they still won't. Even if you say you can, it's okay to disagree with me. They've been so conditioned to not do it, or just might be afraid for other reasons, that like you said, once the most senior person in the room says something, no one's going to disagree with them. But if you so that solution of listen to everyone first, have everyone else speak before you speak, make sure that people still it avoids that hang up that people have with not wanting to disagree with their boss. And then also it's like active listening, and then actually care about and apply what people suggest, not just you've been heard and ignored, because that's almost worst. So those two tips right away are great for helping apply and starts to see the change in culture and the change in outcomes that happens when executives make this shift, because it's everyone that's like they say, oh, we want innovation, we need people to get more involved and contribute and more productive and bring more to the table. But if you're not creating that psychological safety, you're not actually listening to them, you're not applying what they suggest, or you're dominating all the conversations, it doesn't matter what you say verbally, or you have on like in the break room on a poster saying what you care about, but what you're actually demonstrating is the opposite. And so they're not gonna get the results they're looking for from their teams, because they're not creating the sort of environments that inspire people to step up.
Totally agree. That's exactly the point, that you're not building an environment that helps people to step up or trust you. And like you said, that's such a great point, that you listen to them and then you do nothing about it. That's actually worse, because then you have broken the trust that they actually were placing in you when they were sharing something with you. So true. And to that extent, what I would also then build upon is, so that's the first set of things that you got to do. But then, when we come to the second part, which is how do you move things forward? That's when the part about setting the right mechanisms and the structures and embodying that and role modeling it comes into the picture. Be vocally self-critical. So, whenever you have made a mistake, openly admit it. Here is something I would like to bring up that, many people often miss. So, mistakes or failures are three kinds. Not all mistakes, not all failures are equal. So, the first kind is when it's a mistake that could have been avoided. It was just a process issue. If the standard operating procedures were documented well, you wouldn't have made that mistake. Those kind of things, right? So, those are the mistakes that you should always measure on how many times was this mistake repeated. And that's what you want to reduce, because you basically want to eliminate these mistakes. These shouldn't have happened, because if your process is good, the process and the mechanism will take care of itself. The second kind of mistakes are what you couldn't have avoided because you didn't know any better. So, the first time you're doing something, things are going to happen. And that's all right, because now you learn from it and then you move on. The third kind of mistakes are the ones that you want to actually encourage. And I won't even call them mistakes, I want to call them failures. And you want to encourage those failures. And those are the failures that people do, and those happen when they tried something new, something out of the ordinary, something that broke the norm. Maybe it broke the system, but you learned something new. And those have to be measured on a totally different element. They have to be measured on what did you learn from that failure. And so as leaders, the thing that you need to start sharing and role modeling and setting up in your teams is really about how do each of your team members start thinking about failures and mistakes in these buckets. And they all hold themselves accountable for certain ones, and they want to share the learnings, as well as what should we experiment on next on the last one, so that keeps your team agile and keeps them growing.
I love that distinction between the mistakes that are made because of those three buckets, between mistakes because something was new, we've never done it before, and we didn't know any better. The mistakes because the process wasn't followed, or there's a flaw, and then there's the bucket of this is something we were experimenting with and the experiment failed, so it wasn't really a mistake, but we were trying to be innovative and do something different, and it didn't end up working, but now we have something we can apply and learn from and build off of, and that actually leads to real innovations. And so often especially immediately my mind goes to marketing, where you see so many companies repeating or kind of copying each other because, oh, it worked before, so it's going to work again. But in marketing, it's always about trying to do something new and different and outside the box thinking. But everyone's so risk averse, or their companies don't allow for that experiment to fail in a marketing sense, and so they'll punish people for failing in that way or as a mistake, when it really is, well, we got more information, we can apply it to something else and build off it. But it's the ones that celebrate those experiments, and then, because every so often one will actually work and you have a huge success, but if you don't give people the freedom and the safety to experiment, you're never going to get those, and you're just going to have this slow creeping decline in effectiveness, because all your stuff just feels the same and designed by committee, and it's always just you're staying in the safe little bubble because you don't allow people to move outside of it, but then outside is where the success is, where the growth is, where the results are you're trying to get to. So they're just constantly shooting themselves in the foot. And but it's such a slow, like gradual decay that people, it's like the whole, like the frog and increasingly hot pot of water, they don't jump out until they're already boiled, like that whole thing. They don't realize till it's too late that they're cooked. And so, but it's from the outside, everyone's like, just stop doing that. But I love the way you distinguish them, because it allows people to, when they're having the reviews, like what went wrong or what happened, well, this wasn't a mistake, this is an experiment that failed, but now we can apply it to something else. That's brilliant. And I think it's easily applied to a whole bunch of industries that otherwise are lacking the innovation they need to really make a difference and break out of the competition. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Shruti. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a comment, subscribe. If you want to connect with either of us, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.
Thanks so much for having me, Karl. It was a pleasure speaking with you.